week. It's got to be at least 40 minutes. And we're like, oh, okay. All right. Are we really going to sign up for this? So we did. And we were kind of surprised.
That's pretty tough.
Yeah, it is, man. 'Cause especially, like I say, we're all traveling. We're all working. Our producer actually lives out in L.A.
Okay.
And so, trying to coordinate with him is, it's just, it's a lot. But we've managed to do it, and it's been a lot of fun.
So it's just you two, or you guys have guests on?
We have guests on sometimes.
Okay.
So it's not, again, very loosely formatted.
Right. Well, that makes it easy, though.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And so now if we think of someone that we want to have on, then we get them on, and it's not too bad. But we're not like pressured to have someone booked every week kind of thing.
Yep.
That'd be harder.
Yep.
I don't.
Yep.
I mean, you.
It's tough.
Credit.
It's tough. It's tough to have a guest.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when you have a co-host, you always have the option.
For sure.
And you can just
it's helpful. And
you can just have topics you guys talk about. And
right.
Talk
and
for
so
hours.
and then our producer, he sits in on it too. So he's basically a third guy on the show, which kind of works. And the whole shtick is we just hate him and just
doggy.
Yeah. I rip on him the whole time and like just disagree with every opinion he's got and just question why he's even there. So it works out well. And like, at the races now, people are following along enough that we've got, so his name's Tim.
Yep.
But we call him Thim because he hates it. Thim. And so now we've got like anti-Thim stickers that we sell at the track. And we see like people walking around with like tattoos. We've got shirts made and hats of them.
That's crazy.
It's great. Oh, yeah. He's immortalized. It's like the most hated guy in the podcasting world. It's great.
How we sounding now, Stretch? Everything sounding good?
Yeah, everything's good.
Yeah.
It sounds real good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys can drop in whenever.
Whenever. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Follow D Money podcast. Today is a good day. My journey to find people very interesting to talk to leads me to a young man who I admire in his respective field. And a lot of people will recognize him from TV, Dances with the Stars.
Yes.
James Hinchcliffe, thank you for coming to the show.
Man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate being called a young man, too. It's been a while.
Well, you are a young man.
Not in my business.
You, my friend, have a very interesting story. You've done a lot, and you've been through a lot.
Yes, sir.
In your time, and you are currently doing a lot. You're a busy man.
You got to stay busy, man.
Yeah.
You only get one shot at this thing called life, so you gotta enjoy it while you got it.
I've been trying to lasso you in for
Yeah, I know. We've been trying to do this for a long time. I'm glad it finally worked out.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And I want to ask you first, why did you decide to become a race car driver?
Man, it's funny. It's not even something you decide. I don't think.
Right,
I mean, a lot of things have to go right for that that career path to really kind of evolve in front of you. And I got into. I've always been a fan of racing. So my dad was a big racing guy, and I just grew up with that influence. So I always loved it as a kid.
Yep.
And then I got a go-kart for my 9th birthday. Okay. So like if you're a professional driver, you probably started in a go-kart of some kind.
That's what most guys do.
Right.
Okay.
It's like if you're not skating by 4, you're never going to play in the NHL, and if you're not putting by 3, you're never going to be the next Tiger Woods. You got to start young.
Yep.
So I started at 9. That's like over the hill for kids.
Really?
I got told that I was too late.
Dang. I think I talked to Sam Schmidt. I literally think he said 3 or 4.
Yeah. I know that's a lot of guys are like that.
That's crazy.
And so, but when I was 9, like even at 9 years old, I'm like, this isn't a real job. Like that's not something people actually get to do. I just want to go race go-karts with my dad on the weekends. Like, it was just a hobby.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Right.
And so that's how it started for me. So I didn't care if I was over the hill because I could still do it. And you go-kart until you're 80. Doesn't matter, you know? Right. So that's how it started for me. And it wasn't until I was about 14 years old. You start moving up the ranks. In karting, you change classes based on age and weight and things like that. And as the older you get, the faster it gets, the more competitive it gets, and the more I seem to enjoy it. And then by 14, I was racing against a lot of kids that had, from the age of 5, wanted to be professional racing drivers.
Yep.
And we were competitive. So we're like, well, hey, man, if that's what these guys are doing, that's what they want to do, maybe we do have a shot at this. So my dad and I were like, all right, let's ride this train as long as as long as we can, as far as it takes us. And when it stops, it stops. But we had fun doing it, and we'll see where it goes.
When in those competitive times at that age, are you competing for prizes like money?
Not money, no. It's little
Because
plastic
it's still amateur,
trophies.
right?
That,
Like,
yeah,
okay,
for sure,
okay.
for
So
sure.
it's like soccer and all that stuff.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's
But you're just driving.
right. Like there's a pro karting tour that
Okay.
goes around the States, which, again, it's for all intents and purposes, it's professional level karting, but that still doesn't actually pay anything, right?
Right.
That's just like
Right.
establishing, like, I'm trying to take this further, so I'm going to race against this group of people, rather than like the Saturday warriors that just want to go out and have fun on the
Right.
weekends, So it kind of separates it that way.
So when did you know that you were a cut above? Like was there a moment that you said, I'm good at this?
Yeah, man, I think athletes in general we're always our own harshest critics.
Mhm.
Like my joke answer to that would be like, I'm still trying to figure out if that moment's coming at any point in my life. But the only time that I really, it kind of helped me switch my perspective a little bit was, I'd been karting and we'd been pretty successful at the karting level, but I had a big handicap because I lived in Toronto,
Yep.
and 6 months of the year you're sledding.
Yeah.
You're not racing go-karts,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
racing these kids that, first of all, have a ton more money than I do, and racing's a money sport.
Yep.
There's no way to hide that.
Yep.
And they live in Florida and California and these places where they're just
Year round.
year round.
Yep.
And so I did well considering, I guess. But I always sort of like, I'm not beating these guys as often as I should be if I'm going to be, whatever. And then when I was 15 years old, I got special permission to race in this car series that was based up in Canada.
Yep.
You're supposed to be 16, but I knew the owner. He knew that I was, he watched me kart or whatever. And so he's like, all right, I'll let you do this race. And I was racing against 18, 20, 22-year-old guys that, wanted to be professional racing drivers.
Yep.
And I won my very first race. I was 15 years old. And the guy that ran the series, he's calling up the podium. He calls up the second place guy, the third place guy, and he calls me up. He goes, and your winner, whose mom had to drive him to the track today, James. And so it was at that point, I was like, man, like these guys have been doing this for a couple years. This is what they want to do for a living. And I walked in my first time in this kind of new environment, because now you're putting your 8 years or whatever of karting behind you.
Yep.
This is a very different thing, that first step into cars. And it went really well. So I was like, all right, maybe there is something here.
Yep. With race car driving, and it's, to me, it's a little bit different than basketball or football, because you can stand out in basketball and football, and it's not about winning the game. It's about being good at what you do. And driving, you literally have to win to be considered good. And a lot of the people come from the karting and the early racing. They just win everything, right? That's usually how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like anything, right? At the most entry level, the pool is very deep. There's lots of people that can. In racing, it's unfortunately really comes down to finances, right? There's like a lot of people that can afford to go karting, relatively speaking.
Yep.
Then the next level up, that number goes way down.
Right.
And then the next level up from that, it goes way down again. It gets exponentially harder to move up for financial reasons as much as anything, right?
Wow.
And so you do have to win to stand out. But when you think of, like, if you're LeBron James at 14 years old, you could live in the most obscure town somewhere in America, but because of, the internet and the way the world works, someone's going to know that you're a phenom. Someone's going to see you, and if that's what you want to do, you will play professional basketball.
Right.
Like that was like written in the stars well before he ever signed a contract anywhere, right?
Yep.
It was an inevitability. With driving, you're so reliant on other things that you don't control as a driver. Your equipment, your engines, your tires, your car, your chassis, your cart.
Yep.
So you could be the most talented driver that's ever sat in a racing machine, and that driver may have never been a professional, never been paid $1 to drive in their life, because they didn't get the right opportunity at the right time, because they didn't have the money or whatever it was to show their talent.
Yeah.
So it's really the dumbest sport out there for that reason, but it's interesting because it is so much of a business as well as a sport, and as a participant in it, you have to understand the on-track and the off-track side of it.
Yeah.
So it's a huge challenge. Like you've got to be a businessman, you've got to be a hustler, you got to be able to go out there and sell yourself. Like at the IndyCar level, it's one thing. You can say, hey, I'm in the Indy 500, millions of people watch, a bunch of people are there, largest sporting event in the world, yada, yada. There's something to sell there.
Right.
When I'm trying to sell a USF 2000 ride that still costs $250,000, And you're getting none of that. You're not on TV.
Yeah.
No one at the races. No one cares about your race. No one's watching you guys.
Yep.
You're the warm-up act.
Yep.
You're the warm-up act to the warm-up act.
Yeah.
It's really hard to justify giving somebody,
money. Yeah. Right. Right.
So figuring out how to navigate those lower categories is like one of the most challenging things.
And it's part of the sport.
It's it. I mean, it's not fair. It's not cool, but it is what it is. So if you love racing and you want to drive, you just got to figure it out.
Dang.
Yeah.
Man. A lot of people assume that when you drive, that's what you do. Your car is your muscle. There's no activity involved. Like, what is your physical regimen? Like, how do you stay in shape for racing?
So it's a huge misconception, right? That driving's not physical.
Right.
And I understand it. It's one of the least relatable sports because so few people get the opportunity to even try it, right? So like anyone can pick up a football, try and throw it 30 yards at a moving target and think, okay, Tom Brady's really good at what he does.
Yep.
And anybody can stand at a 3-point line and miss 9 out of 10 and be like, all right, Steph Curry's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
But you can appreciate how hard that is. But so few people get to drive a race car to really understand what it takes. So they equate it to driving a road car, which is, pretty easy. It's not physically demanding. It's not mentally that challenging. It's pretty simple.
They get on 465 like.
Yeah, exactly. No problem. That's basically the Indianapolis Motor
30
Speedway.
minutes.
Yeah. So for us, where it comes from is, our cars, we don't have power steering, right? So if you ever driven like a vintage car that doesn't have power steering, right? Around the parking lot, it's like a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
But once you get moving, it's not too bad.
Right.
So we're the opposite because we've got these giant wings on the front and back of our car that produce all this downforce. So the faster we go, the more the air is pushing that car into the ground.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, we're cornering it like 3 Gs, 3 times the force of gravity. So if you're driving a 1,500-pound race car and you're turning it through a 3G corner, that's now a 4,500-pound race car, and you don't have power steering to help you. So that wheel's getting heavier and heavier and heavier every time, every mile an hour quicker you go, it's getting heavier.
Wow.
So you need a tremendous amount of upper body strength to be able to wrestle the car, right? So you're doing that, and that's one corner of one lap, and you have a 15-corner track, and you're doing 80 laps, right? And the braking is up to 5G, so your neck's trying to pop off your shoulder, so you need strong neck muscles, you need core, you got to put 2,000 pounds of pressure through the brake system with your left leg. So, so it's actually a lot of strength required.
Yep.
But you're doing that nonstop too, right? So
you got to have stamina.
Exactly.
Endurance,
Football is explosive for 10 seconds, and then you kind of regroup. And in hockey, you do a 2-minute shift, and you get a break. You're doing this for 2 to 4 straight hours. So your heart rate's up. You need the strength to do it. That's going to get your heart rate up. Then you need the cardio endurance to last for that amount of time.
Yeah.
Because you can't start fatiguing. Because you start fatiguing, you start making mistakes.
Right.
The body gets tired. The mind gets tired, and that's when mistakes happen. And we're in a sport where at 200 miles an hour, you're covering a football field a second. So if you miss your turning point by 1/10 of a second, that's 10 yards, and your margin of error is maybe a foot.
Yeah.
So your mental side has to be so sharp. And to stay sharp mentally, you got to make sure physically you're dealing with it. So we train 6 days a week. It's head to toe, full body muscle stuff. We do a lot of endurance training, a lot of high intensity cardio, a lot of low intensity, long duration cardio, all different sort of strength training, a lot of individual limb stuff to make sure we keep symmetry in the body, a lot of hand-eye coordination stuff, reaction time training. So it's my full-time job is going to the gym, and on weekends I get to drive a race car.
Exactly, and I think that when people hear that, they're going to be like, "What? Wow!"
Yeah,
like nobody thinks about that because all we do is watch it on TV.
For sure,
and everybody thinks that they can drive fast.
And you can't see the athlete either, right?
Right.
They're covered by a car. They've got a helmet
that's why I always say
on.
the car is the muscle.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that we are very shallow thinking that you can just hop in a car and just do it.
It's just because our sport is so hard to sample. So it's our fault. The best tool that we've got is we've got an IndyCar 2-seater. Yeah. And Mario Andretti still drives people around this thing. In this thing.
I want to do that.
We'll make that happen.
Okay.
That's no problem.
Yeah, I want to do that.
But it gives, so you're not even driving. You're just a passenger.
Just sitting in there.
But just feeling the force that comes through the car to your body while you're just sitting. You don't have to think about anything.
Right.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and it's still crazy.
People walk out of that and they're like, I had no idea that's how bad it was.
Man, it sounds scary.
Yeah. I think being the passenger might be scarier than actually driving it.
What's the future of IndyCar? Like, where do you see it going now? I mean, after the pandemic and a lot of things happened, is it like what's going to change? I know this year you guys put a new like the barrier around the front for safety.
The aero screen.
I like that.
We put that in last year. That was a big deal. That's these cars are so safe now. They really have come an unbelievable amount of distance in terms of how safe they are to drive. The tracks are way safer now.
Yep.
The one sort of Achilles heel we always had was our heads were still open. They're out there. Yes, you're wearing a helmet, but at 200 miles an hour, I mean, a quarter is like a bullet, right?
Yeah.
So the last couple of guys that unfortunately we lost in our sport came from head injuries. And so this was a huge push for a bunch of people at IndyCar to get this aero screen around us. So it's kind of like a halo-like device, and then it's fighter jet glass, basically the same stuff they use in F-16s.
Yeah.
And it's made it definitely, and we've already seen probably 3 or 4 instances in the last 2 seasons where it's potentially saved a guy's life.
That is, man, that's real important. The safety in it.
Yeah.
What is who are the people that you kind of look up to in racing right now? Like the young and up and coming, and the people who have done it. Like, who are the people that you admire racing?
You know, I think if you look within the IndyCar world, if you ask that question of almost anybody, the answer is going to be Scott Dixon, because his sustained level of success is it's one of those things that's just so rare to find. You know, it's like a LeBron. It's like a Tiger Woods. It's like these people that have not just achieved greatness, but maintained greatness for such a long period of time. And he's in his 40s now. He's got 3 kids. He should by all accounts, he should be sitting on his couch having a Coors Light. You know, but he's still out there and he's still just as fast and
still
kicking
relevant.
ass. I mean, he's incredible. And then you look at, there's even other cool examples. This year we've got Jimmy Johnson that's racing in IndyCar with us. This guy's a 7-time NASCAR champion. He had Scott Dixon level of success in a completely different form of motorsports, and then decided, you know what, I've just always wanted to try IndyCar. Let's go do that.
Wow.
And it's not easy.
No.
And so he's putting all his time and effort at, older than most guys in the field. He has already accomplished everything you could possibly want. He's an absolute racing legend, Hall of Famer, all that stuff. And in his retirement, in his free time from NASCAR, he's like, I'm going to go race IndyCar. And you can't help but admire that, you know, just the drive that he still got, the passion he still got for it. And then, I mean, for sure, right now, the youth movement in IndyCar is huge. Yeah. And it's really cool to see, actually, because for a long time, this was it was like an elder statesman dominated sport. You know, you kind of get there as a rookie and you had to fight for 2, 3, 4 seasons before you kind of got to the level where you could compete with the good guys and be in good teams and whatever. Now these guys they're coming out of Indy Lights and they're race winners right off the bat, you know, and they're fighting for championships now. And it's cool to see. The future is definitely bright in terms of level of competition.
But it also has to do with the money again too, right?
No doubt.
Like the teams that have a lot of money usually put out the best cars, and then those cars get the best drivers.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's simple economics when it comes to that stuff, you know, but the series is actually in a great spot. I mean, I think we weathered the storm of the pandemic really well, and everybody at IndyCar, Mark Miles and Penske Corp, who, obviously took over the Speedway in the series, deserve a lot of credit for kind of maintaining it as well as we did. And we've got, the biggest grids that we've had in a long time. We've got teams expanding and adding cars. We've got drivers from other Formula coming over, Jimmy Johnson from NASCAR. We got Romain Grosjean coming over from F1. We had Scott McLaughlin come over from Australia in the supercars. So it's attracting a lot of drivers. We're attracting teams, which means that there's money. There's sponsors that are showing up because if cars are only on track with sponsors. So if we're adding cars, it means we're adding sponsors. So it's in a good spot.
It is. And I always tell, I've had a few people in the IndyCar industry on my show, and I tell them, before I came to Indianapolis, I wasn't into racing at all, and coming from the inner city in LA, we do have the Long Beach race, which is a big deal to me. Like, I always thought it was one of the dopest things to ever see.
It is.
But how do we get IndyCar to cross over to that audience? Because once I was introduced to it, I was hooked.
Yeah. So
like, I think we're missing something. Like, I know money is involved, but I think that you reach people by making it more reachable. Like
accessible.
they want to be a part accessible. They want to be a part of it.
Right.
And it's not, you can't be a driver, but maybe you could be in a pit, or maybe you can be an engineer, or maybe you can, do something like that. And I think that we need to reach those communities because there's a lot of talent in there too.
For sure.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that IndyCar is trying to got a big initiative around is STEM programs, right?
Yep.
For like exactly what you're saying. I mean, engineering a race car is like one of the coolest jobs you can do as an engineer.
Right.
If you work on rocket ships, fighter jets, or race cars,
making
those are
a
pretty
car
much the
fast,
three coolest things you could do as an engineer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there is a big push because there is a talent shortage. We did go through a phase where it was tough to get people to fall in love with racing.
Yeah.
But kind of like you said, I mean, you grew up near a race and you went to that race. And once you go and see it in person, it's really hard to not leave a fan.
It is.
And so, someone had this line a couple years ago, and I don't think it's as true then or as now as it was then, but he said that IndyCar was the best kept secret in sports because it is so.
I kind of agree.
Right. It's so entertaining.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes for the first time, falls in love with it. But we just got to get them out. We got to get them to come for the first time.
I don't know why it is that way, because I've been to the Indy 500 like 3 times. Every time I go, I post it, and people are like, "Oh my God, wow!" And I'm like, "Come to the Indy 500." And I want them to see this because it's amazing.
And one of the things I think that matters a lot is TV just doesn't do it justice, And
no,
so like you could watch a race on TV and you'd be like, yeah, all right, that was okay.
Yep.
But if you go and see it in person, you just understand it so much more that then you're going to watch it on TV. But we've got to get people out to the track first and foremost.
Absolutely. We talked earlier about the safety of the cars, and you yourself were involved in a pretty bad wreck.
Yes.
Can you talk about your mindset right after, or actually, so I was in a motorcycle wreck a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and in the moment when it's happening, I probably felt like it was about 15 minutes long. It's probably like 2 seconds.
Right.
But it felt like forever. I had so much time to think. What was going on in your mind during that time?
Well, I mean,
and explain what happened.
Right. Okay. Yep. So we're at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're practicing, and I had a failure on the car. Part of the suspension failed. Just freak occurrence. Wow. Just 1 in a million thing. And so the car flew off into the wall, and that's bad on a good day. That's a bad day.
Yep.
But on a bad day, when you have something like that happen, what in my particular circumstance, part of the suspension actually pierced the tub. So it was a 3-ish foot piece of steel that holds the wheels to the side of the car, rather than crumpling, which it normally does. You know, like if you hold an egg end to end and you squeeze it, it won't break.
Yep.
I just hit at that perfect angle. Well, rather than folding, that steel rod just shot through the car like a bullet.
Wow.
And it went right through me. So I was shish kebabbed for all intents and purposes. So it was stuck in the car, and I was stuck on it. And so that was unfortunate, and it hit an artery in my left leg, and I was bleeding to death. That was the big issue.
Yeah.
And it was a freak thing. Like no one's ever seen that before. It's never happened before.
You've seen it.
I've seen it. I've been there.
You have
got the T-shirt. Don't recommend it.
Seen it.
But
wow.
So I mean, kind of speaking to what you're talking about, I think very fortunately, I have no memory of the accident itself.
Okay.
It was such a big trauma. I had such a big concussion on top of everything else that was going on. I don't remember that moment at all, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're talking about because we have crashes all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it sound like I suck here, but no, it's part of the sport, right? And you have those moments.
But I mean, yours was so traumatic that I understand that. Just no recollection.
For sure. The body is an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And the mind is an incredible part of it too, right? I mean, so last thing I remember, I was driving my car, everything was great. Next thing I remember, I'm on a backboard in the hospital. I got a tube down my throat. I'm in a neck brace. I'm staring at a bunch of bright lights and a bunch of concerned doctors' faces. And I'm thinking, something has gone wrong. This is not good.
So you literally were driving and then woke up.
Yep.
Wow.
It's weird.
That is crazy.
It's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
And I've had that before. I've had a concussion before in the car where I remember driving and then I just woke up in an ambulance. I'm like, well, this is weird. So luckily I'm like, okay, I know I'm in a hospital, so that's a good thing. At least I made it here.
Yeah,
you know. But it was tough, man. I mean, I spent the next 4 months recovering from that, and out of the car and healing, and then trying to get my training back going, get strong enough to get back in a car.
Yep.
But I think my approach to it was always to disassociate my injuries or anything I was going through from the car or from racing.
So you didn't have any fear getting back into a car.
Right.
Yep.
So for me, I woke up, I'm like, okay, I've had an accident.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what it was, where it was, how it happened. It's irrelevant. I can't change any of that. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
I've had it. How do I get back in that car?
Right.
And so I was only thinking forward. You don't think back and put any of that on it.
Yep. So that was your mindset. Just attack it.
Yeah.
You're going to get better and you're going to get back in the car.
Right. As soon as the doctor was like, yeah, it was bad. We fixed it and you're going to be okay. That's all I needed to hear.
And you were only out 4 months?
Yeah. It was supposed to be 6, but
jeez.
I was eager,
you're an athlete.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, you're an athlete. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
Was that before or after Dancing with the Stars?
So that was before.
Wow.
And it's funny because a lot of people are like, so, did the accident change you? Like, were you scared to get back in the car, or were you going to be the same driver, whatever?
Yep.
And I've always said that professionally, it didn't change me at all. Like, I went into the next race that I did with the exact same mindset I did the last one I had competed in, right? But personally, yeah, I mean, as a human being, it changed me a ton.
Yeah.
Because, nearly losing your life, you put a lot of things into different perspectives and understand what's important and what's not. And that life is short and you only get one shot at it. So, enjoy it, do things, and the reason I say that is because if I had been asked to do Dancing with the Stars before the accident, I'm pretty sure I'd have said no.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But because it was afterwards, I was in this sort of different place and I was like, yeah, screw it. Let's go. Why not?
Yeah. Like, people don't understand. The more you say yes, the more opportunity and the more life
for sure
you're giving yourself. We got to stop saying no so much to opportunities.
Absolutely.
How did Dances with the Stars change you itself? Like, how was that experience?
It was wild, man.
Yeah.
It was so much work.
Yeah.
So much work.
Well, that was good for your sport too, I think, because a lot
time.
of people didn't know IndyCar driver, race car driver. So you go into one of the biggest stages
for sure,
and you did well too. So I mean, how was that for you? How was that spotlight?
So that was part of it, right? Is I was heavily encouraged by the series and my team and all the sponsors. Like, you should do this. This would be great for the greater good of the sport.
Right.
And I'm all about that. Right. I'm all about that. So Elio Castroneves, who just won the Indy 500.
Yeah.
He's
won Dancing with the Stars.
Won Dancing with the Stars. Yeah. 10 years before I did it, he had been on the show.
He's got like an EGOT.
Yeah, exactly. He's the only man on earth that has won both of those things. Exactly. That is true. But no, so he kind of convinced me. I had like 24 hours to make a decision. I got a phone call. We were at a race weekend.
Yep.
And they're like, hey, here's the deal. You got to move to LA. You got to give it 3 months of your life. This is the deal, blah, blah, blah. We need to know in 24 hours.
Dang.
And it starts in 2 weeks. I'm
wow.
like, man, okay. So I took a couple minutes and I was at the track. So I met up with Elio and talked through with him. And he convinced me to do it for sure. Like, he was a big part of it.
Yep.
And you go and you start training. And I'm like, I'm not a dancer.
Yeah.
Man, I'm a 5'9" white guy from Canada. This was my dancing before the show. But I'm like, whatever. You're just dancing. It's not a big deal. Like, we're not curing cancer here. Let's just go have fun.
Yep.
And my whole goal for the first show was just don't trip.
Right.
Like, just don't be that guy.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, we worked pretty hard the first one. And so the first show happens. And it's crazy because it's live and like there's people in the audience. There's like 700 people in the studio or whatever. Yeah. But there's like 12 million watching at home. And you're like, man, you cannot think about that at the time. It's the most like, I race in front of people all the time, but I've got a helmet on. There's loud engines. I'm not paying. I'm super focused. I'm not paying any of that.
You're exposed at this
Very
point.
exposed. And you can hear everything.
Oh, wow.
See, that's one thing for us. Like, if you played arena sport, you hear the crowd, you get energy off. You're used to that. Yep. I've never heard a crowd cheer for me before while doing something, like that's never been a thing. So all of a sudden you do all these rehearsals and then you do it on the show and you dip your partner or something and they all start clapping. You're like, what is that sound? Why is that happening? I didn't practice with that. So anyway, I get through the first one and it ends. At the end of the show, they put up like a scoreboard.
Yeah.
Because I always thought that, like, I probably should have researched this before I went on the show. I did not. They give you your little paddles with your 5, 7, whatever. I thought that was just to like give the audience at home a reference for how the judges, the professionals thought you did, because you're supposed to call in and vote, right? And so, man, I pushed myself so hard. It was 12-hour days, 6 days a week.
12 hours of dancing?
Yeah. It was wild.
Dang.
So like you're only supposed to get 8, but I was like, I need more time.
Yeah.
And so like we would rent, like me and my partner would pay out of our own pocket. We'd rent studios. We'd go practice on our own because I was like, I have to be good.
Right.
I have to score well.
Win. Yeah.
That you want to win.
Yeah.
And so you can go through that experience and have it not be that grueling, but you're going to go home early unless you're like a naturally incredible dancer,
right?
Which I was not. So like I made it, I made it grueling.
Yeah.
But it's because I wanted to do well, and it worked. We ended up coming second, which Elio loves to remind me of.
But that's dope, man. I know I would go home first day.
No, you would. I
yes,
bet you
would.
wouldn't.
You ever seen a giraffe dance? I would have went home day one. Put a tutu on a giraffe.
Dude,
that's me.
If I can do it, literally anybody can do it. You just have to put the time in.
What's the next crazy thing that you're gonna do?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Yeah. What's on the docket for James Hinchcliffe?
Just like in general?
Yeah, like Dancing with the Stars. Anything like that lined up?
Nothing lined up at the moment.
Yeah.
I've always loved the show Survivor though.
Oh.
I would do Survivor.
Yep. That would be good.
Here's the thing though. I fell in love with Survivor like at the beginning.
Me too.
And then, 3-4 seasons in, it started just becoming so much about like the alliances and the politics and the drama and stuff. And like, that's so not me. So like, I actually don't think
do well though.
I don't think I would do well because I'm not good at like all the backstabbing and the like back channeling and making alliances.
But they use people like you to
yeah,
get
I would
further.
get to like the top 6 or something,
no,
right?
but
And then I would just get stabbed in the back and sent home. And I'm like,
well, then you got to pass. You'll win all the challenges.
Yeah, maybe get the odd idol or two and make it one further than you should have. But ultimately, I'm not cunning enough to go all the way on that one, I don't think.
Do you consider yourself successful?
Yeah. So that's a great question. The answer is yes. I think I am so lucky, to have I'm in my 11th season of IndyCar racing, which is amazing. Like most people that make it to this level, they don't get a decade out of it. And it's crazy to say that I've been here for a decade.
Yep.
Have I accomplished everything that I want to? No, not even close.
Yeah.
Would I love to do it for another 10? Absolutely. Yep. But if it stopped tomorrow, I can't be upset with what I've had, and the opportunities I've been given. I'm so thankful for that.
Yep.
But I've always, people they ask that question sometimes, or you think about that yourself. And I've always shied away from trying to put like a quantitative, like a number,
like a goal,
right? Like I want to win this many races or this many championships or whatever.
Yep.
Because our sport, there's so many things out of your control. As a driver, you could drive well enough to win 100 races and only win 5 because other things outside of your control. So the thing I've always I laid in bed one night and thought about this. I was like, all right, so what is actual success in my career for me? And I decided that it was to leave the sport with the respect of the people that I respect in it.
Okay.
So if I can do that, when I hang up my helmet, I can look at the Scott Dixons and the guys like that I really respect as racing drivers, and they can share a mutual respect with me, then I'll think that I've done a good job.
in your in your drive to become the best.
Yeah.
That's a good definition of it. I like that.
I think it works.
What on the same lines, what are things that you haven't accomplished that you want to accomplish in the sport?
Well, I mean, the simple and easy one's the 500, right? Like everybody just wants to win that race,
right?
Because that race really means immortality. Your face is on that trophy for the rest of time. For the rest of your days on this planet, you will be introduced as Indy 500 winner so and so.
Yep.
And like a season's championship is way harder to win
than a 500.
Than a 500.
It's one race.
It's one race.
Right.
A championship, you've got to be good across 17 weekends, all different types of tracks, all different conditions, circumstances, scenarios, whatever. Yep. You can luck your way into a 500 win. I mean,
really?
I hate to say that, but
really?
like you kind of can.
Yeah.
But still, there's something about it, man. That like if you can have a championship or 500, which one do you want? Most guys are going to say a 500.
That is so crazy to me.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
We are very bizarre people, as we're wired wrong in a lot of ways. But then the other thing that I want to do is drivers as athletes, when I look at other sports, right? And like, I've had the opportunity to make some friends that play in other pro sports, whatever. Yep. And we are so underrepresented in the industry as drivers. We are so disposable. We are still where most other sports were 40 years ago before they had any kind of players associations or unions or anything like that. And I mean, it's going to sound really petty for a guy that gets to drive race cars for a living. I understand that. But, like, there's no protection for us. Like, we have...
You need it, though.
There are no guarantees. There's no insurance.
That's not petty at all.
My legacy, I think, what I want that to be when I'm gone is, like, yeah, he was a really good racing driver. But, like, what he did for the sport was amazing and still around. And that is to really structure something that looks after the drivers.
Yep.
And make sure that we're treated fairly. Because right now, but the team owners and the series, they have all the power.
Yeah.
And we're the ones out there risking our lives and, putting on the show for everybody. And we have very, very little say, control, or things that happen in our life or in our sport that affects us, And I just want to see that. We don't need to take it over. It's not
right. No,
but
no.
just
but
that
no,
balance.
But that's a conversation that should be had. You guys need like a drivers union.
Right. There's a reason every other pro sport has an association of some kind.
But do you know the first steps you take to do that?
So I've had some conversations with guys that have helped do that sort of thing in other sports.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Mark Miles, who's the president of IndyCar right now, he was running pro tennis when the Tennis Players Association started. So he's actually got some experience with being there for the creation of the Players Union. And him and I have had some really good conversations about it. And, there are reasons why it makes sense, even from the series standpoint, to have something like that going. But that's going to be a long, hard fight. Because like anything.
No, that's tough. They because they fight unions all the time. So
they don't want to give up any power.
Right.
And so at some point you've got to concede some power.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing to convince people to do. But that's what I want, like, for my sport, that's my people, the guys and girls that go out on the racetrack and risk their lives. Like, we need somebody also kind of looking out for us just a little bit.
Yeah, you could spearhead that, and that could be your legacy.
If everything goes according to plan, that'd be neat.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
What's after? Do you do things to set up your future after IndyCar? Do you want to own a team, or do you what are your dreams?
Man, I don't think I would ever want to own a team.
No.
I've seen how tough that is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be so rewarding when it goes well, but I've seen how tough it is to do that and to maintain it and maintain a level of success. I'll definitely be involved in the sport. Like, this is my life. I'll be involved in it somehow. And I've always thought ahead, because you never know when you've raced your last race.
Right.
Like, it could end tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so you've always got to kind of have at least an eye on the future. So there's some different business things that I've gotten involved in over the years, that I'll, eventually be able to spend a little more time and get a little more involved with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the kind of shorter term, as soon as I stop physically driving, I've had some cool opportunities to do the commentating side of it.
Yep.
And so, I'd love to explore that a little bit more and kind of go the TV route a little bit.
I think you're really good at that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you do
Thanks,
a great job. How about family? Like, how important is family and how you deal with it in racing? Because I know it's very time consuming, and you are pretty much newlywed, right?
Yeah. 2 years.
Yeah. So how was that?
It's awesome. I mean, I'm so lucky, because I've found someone that has an equally as bizarre job as I do.
Yeah.
So my wife's an actor.
Yep.
And so she knows what it's like to, your time's not your own.
Yep.
You've got to go somewhere at someone else's command at the drop of a hat. You've got to be gone for weeks at a time.
Yep.
You've got to work crazy hours, and, the demands of her industry are, there's a lot of parallels.
Yep.
And so just understanding that sort of lifestyle.
It helps the understanding part, yeah.
Big time.
Right.
If I just met someone, here in town that had a 9 to 5 or whatever, and it's like, cool, I'm literally never going to see you.
Right.
But, I work weekends, you're 9 to 5 during the week. It's going to be tough.
Right.
But no, so, she's been able to travel with me, when I'm on the road, which is great. And then if she's got to go off on a project, she'll go, film for 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever it is. And then, and I understand her being gone. So that sort of works out. And, she's my biggest supporter. She helps me in every way. She makes sure she whips my ass into shape. I'm going to the gym. I'm eating right. She's such a good influence in that sense. And she's got a good head on her shoulders too. If I'm ever in a weird spot and I need to make a difficult decision, she can voice an interesting opinion that I might not see. And even one that I might not want to agree with at first, but that at the end of the day, I'm like, damn it, she's right. It's actually pretty good. What she's, so it's been great, man. And, like you say, we're married 2 years. We don't have kids. It's not on the short-term plan, because we got such crazy schedules. If that's going to happen, it's going to be down the road.
Right.
So.
Okay. I want to thank you for coming, but I want to end this with a really odd question.
Okay.
All right. If you could be the best athlete you could in any sport, and you would be the best, which sport would you pick if it's not racing?
It can't be racing.
Can't be racing. And like you'll be the whatever physical specimen you wanted to be in that sport. So you can pick whatever sport you want. What sport would you choose other than racing?
I mean, I'm Canadian, so I'd probably default to hockey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was that's pretty much like a layup for you, though.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a cop out answer, I know, but like just growing up, those guys, like the best of the best in the NHL, like when I watch them play, it just, man, it never ceases to amaze me. Like the unbelievable skill, and like obviously all pro sport, like the skill required is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I
think
next
hockey. For me, hockey is something that I've never really dived into, but it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a fun sport. It's like a nice mix. It's got some of the strategy that you see in like in football, but a little more the pace of basketball, and it's although being a really
and
good,
boxing.
Yeah,
they allow fighting. Like
being the best quarterback ever would also not be terrible though.
That wouldn't be bad.
That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
If I had actually that's pretty close.
Being the best quarterback would be pretty.
Because again, I mean, you watch some of those like comeback games in football are the most exciting things to watch, and you can see the strategy, and that's what I love. I love the strategy, right?
Yeah.
And I love reading the opponent and like watching the really, really good players in whatever sport at that particular skill is just awesome to me.
It is.
So,
it is.
Yeah. How about you? What would be your?
I've always would say football.
Yeah.
Yeah. Football would be the sport that I would want to be the best in, and I would want to be a quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Best all time.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming out, taking time out of your busy schedule.
No, thank you.
I finally got you.
Yeah. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will. And you also have a podcast, so people can listen to your podcast.
Yes.
Yep.
So me and fellow IndyCar driver Alex Rossi, we have a podcast called Off Track with Hinch and Rossi.
Yep.
So you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts.
Dope.
And we're on Sirius XM on Thursday afternoons, I believe,
Dope.
on the IndyCar channel.
Good.
So yeah, feel free to check in there. Or
And what's your social medias?
Yeah,
like?
at Hinchtown.
At Hinchtown, everything.
On everything.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you. Thanks for coming out. Please go to followdmoney.com to buy merch, pump some money into this, and ask me some questions. Like, tell me how you feel about this conversation I had with James and what questions I missed. I should have asked him probably some other stuff, but
and then we just come back and
come and do
questions.
it again.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Good luck to the rest of the season.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.